Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host, Josh Size. And I have a very solid episode for you today. Everyone's seen the videos. You've seen Andy Ruiz in the gym with Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez is pound for pound number one in the world. And the Canelo team, after Oscar Valdez's major upset victory over Miguel Burchell, is buzzing. Everyone is talking about the Canelo team. Eddie Reynoso won Trainer of the Year, according to a lot of different people. And right now, if Canelo Alvarez were to finish the year and Oscar Valdez were to beat, let's say, Shakur Stevenson or even Jamel Herring for another title, it's going to be a clear runaway for Trainer of the Year. However, Andy Ruiz is having a fight that not a lot of people asked for. Like, let's be honest. The last time we saw Andy Ruiz, he was in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, fighting Anthony Joshua in a rematch that, quite frankly, no one expected needed to happen. Andy Ruiz defeated Anthony Joshua on that memorable night where he was an unfathomable underdog to win. There was no one that really thought Andy Ruiz was going to win, for the exception of someone crazy like me who prognosticated that Andy Ruiz was going to win. I had seen the videos of Manny Robles training Andy Ruiz and that power shot over the top, and I just honestly, he wasn't really on my radar, but I did watch a fight where Carlos Takam gave Anthony Joshua fits on the inside, and then when I looked at the styles comparable to Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz and Carlos Takam, I thought maybe Andy Ruiz can catch him with some really heavy shots that he was showing in those videos. And look, I didn't bet on the fight, so I'm not even going to pat myself on the back or anything of that nature. But in the rematch, we saw a very different fight, and I actually became more of a fan of Anthony Joshua after that fight because he dusted himself off, took the L like a champion that he was, got back in the gym, didn't change trainers, didn't change camps, didn't change anything. You guys know the story. He came back and beat Andy Ruiz soundly. Andy Ruiz, a very likable guy. Everyone seemed to be in his corner after he won that fight. You saw all of Twitter go crazy. His social media following, if I'm not mistaken, almost 100x. It was remarkable. He was the first heavyweight champion in Mexican history, and the world seemed to love Andres Ruiz Jr. After the fight, people started singing a different tune. And look, I like Andrew Ruiz a lot. I think he's a very likable guy. He's very amiable, and he kind of seems like just a regular dude. I follow him on YouTube, and I was following his channel after the Anthony Joshua fight, and I really grew to like Andy Ruiz, and I still to this day do. He seems like a regular dude, buys different cars, really into like the scene of eating. You see him having a good time. He's a very sociable guy, smiles a lot, seems to enjoy his family, love. He seems to be like a generous dude. You look at him in stores, he's buying stuff for him and his team. And look, Andy Ruiz clearly had been through it all. If you look at the fight, if you look at his fight career with Top Rank, you would know that it was tumultuous. He ended up buying himself out of Top Rank's contract for $700K and then signed with PBC. And then he signed for the biggest upset of his life. He beat a couple of people and then he got the biggest win of his life in Anthony Joshua. But in the second fight, he showed up unprepared. You saw a very sluggish, overweight Andy Ruiz who could never seemingly get it going. I mean, he had moments in the fight where he could have done more and it looked like he could do more, but he did not train as hard for this time as he did the first time. And also, testament to Joshua for no longer looking to make a statement and trade and try to knock this guy out. He changed his body style. He was no longer this Adonis looking physical specimen that he had come in to fights looking like before. It looked like he changed his approach. But after that fight, no one knew what was going to happen for Andy Ruiz. Did he blow it? And honestly, for a couple of months, it looked like he did. You heard no mention of Andy Ruiz. There were reports that Andy Ruiz was severely overweight, even more so than the Anthony Joshua fight. It looked like he changed his entire camp. It looked like he was done with Manny Robles. It looked like he changed, honestly. It looked like he had succumbed to the moment and it was no longer the fun loving, happy go lucky Andy Ruiz. He fired his trainer via text, according to reports. I don't know if that's true, but Manny Robles seems to still be upset about it. So who knows? It's always a he said or he said and these kind of things. Only two people really know what happened, and maybe Andy Ruiz's handlers know, but it's going to be he said or he said. So now, fast forward, all of a sudden, Canelo Alvarez defeats Callum Smith in dominating fashion, shocks the world. And then an Instagram video comes up. You see Andy Ruiz courting a bunch of different trainers. He looked at Teddy Atlas. He looked at many different places. You heard rumors of different trainers, all the way from Teddy Atlas to, if I'm not mistaken, the Goose and Jim. There was just a bunch of different people talking about training Andy Ruiz. And then one in particular shocked the world. I mean, I don't know why, because it kind of makes sense. You got the number one pound for pound king in Canelo Alvarez, Eddie Reynoso, and then you see Oscar Valdez resurrected his career after seemingly having the worst showing of his life, even though he's still undefeated, right? Why not resurrect your career and go to the Canelo team? Rebuild yourself. Surround yourself around someone who knows what it takes to be a top elite athlete, not only in the world, but in boxing, right? So Andy Ruiz decided to join the Canelo team, and you see him working hard. You see he shedded the pounds. And at this point, we didn't know what was going to happen, right? Andy Ruiz could have just been getting in shape, trying to get a fight. And then the fight was announced. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about this fight. Andy Ruiz is fighting Chris Arreola on May 1st. And as you know, May is, especially in the first 2 weeks, is the quintessential boxing date. It's Mexican Cinco de Mayo, which is more of an American holiday, but it's celebrated greatly in Mexico as well for boxing, anyways. So it made sense that you got Canelo Alvarez fighting on May 8th, right? A little closer to Cinco de Mayo. And then right before that, you have Andy Ruiz fighting another fellow Mexican who was supposed to be the anointed one in Chris Arreola. The only issue I have with this fight is I really didn't know that it was going to be a pay-per-view fight, and it kind of shocked me. Then I did a little more research and found out that Fox PBC are having some issues and they're thinking about maybe liquidating their contract and their deal with PBC. So PBC basically wanted to make a pay-per-view, and this is that pay-per-view requirement while the deal is kind of fading off. Apparently, I'm going to do another video on PBC later, but apparently PBC is going to be in cahoots with CBS or another major network to produce and broadcast their content. Now, the fight. What does this fight mean? Well, look, Chris Arreola is a name. People know Chris Arreola. They remember him. He's an exciting, no nonsense, forward fighting kind of guy. He's always fallen a little short, and he never really lived up to the expectations of his career. He was supposed to be the first Mexican heavyweight champion, and then Andy Ruiz eclipsed him and surpassed him. So Andy Ruiz coming off the most disappointing loss of his career and his biggest, I guess, disappointment in his own life, because he even himself said that he disappointed himself in coming in overweight and felt like if he did train properly, he could have won. Who knows? The rematch is over. It's 1-1. However, one thing we do know is the heavyweight division is a very lucrative division. As you see, you got the Brazils of the world that are constantly getting second chances. And why not allow Andy Ruiz to rebuild his career and come back? The kid only has 2 losses, and one is arguably not a legitimate loss, and that's the one against Joseph Parker, where I felt Andy Ruiz won that fight. But if you look at it, it's a close fight. You could even have it a draw, but I thought Andy Ruiz won, but that's my opinion, right? But in this particular fight, Andy Ruiz has a chance to solidify himself as a top 5 heavyweight in the division. We already know we have Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. However, those two are going to be engaged in battle 2 times minimum. Those are those are the two top dogs of the division, and they're going to unify in an undisputed matchup. So, regardless of whatever Andy Ruiz wants to do, whether he's fifth, sixth, whatever, you know who solidly are number 1 and 2. Number 3, you can arguably say you have to say it's Deontay Wilder. He lost to Tyson Fury 2 times. First one, I thought he lost, but we already know the story, so they got a draw. And then the second time, he got thoroughly dominated by Tyson Fury. I heard all the nonsense about the conspiracies, etc. Whatever you believe, the L is there, and Deontay Wilder's number 3. So now, after those 3 top dogs, you start to fall into a very unique category where you don't really know, truthfully, who is the fourth, fifth, sixth top heavyweight. And now this is kind of where Andy Ruiz has an avenue. You see him training. The main issue and asterisk with Andy Ruiz is you know he's talented. You know he has an amateur pedigree. You know he has boxing skills. However, it's always been the discipline. Every trainer Andy Ruiz has had has mentioned the same thing. Gifted kid, just not gifted at being an athlete, at being a responsible fighter and professional. So, perfect experiment. Tag team Andy Ruiz, who has the God gifted talent, right? Doesn't really listen to other trainers, but if Andy Ruiz doesn't listen to the number 1 pound for pound in the world, who happens to be Mexican, who happens to know what it's like to live and have such high expectations for your boxing career, especially when you're a champion, who else is he going to follow? And if Eddie Reynoso is getting the blessing of Canelo, he knows that Eddie Reynoso can and will kick Andy Ruiz out if he doesn't get his act together. Eddie Reynoso, Canelo Alvarez don't need Andy Ruiz. And that creates a unique scenario where they want nothing but Andy to prosper and succeed. And I think the connection and combination of both are a beautiful marriage. However, not so fast. I've been noticing Andy Ruiz showing hand speed, showing new head movement. You see him trying to implement the Canelo style, and I do like what I'm seeing. However, time still needs to tell. We don't know how Andy Ruiz is going to operate when he's this much lighter. You're fighting a lot bigger guys, and being fast and agile may be positive, but when you're fighting the bigger guys, if you're on the smaller side and a little light, the bigger guys, the taller guys may be a lot for you and they may tire you out in a different way. Sure, you may be in condition, but you could get leaned on, similar to Tyson with McBride and taller people. So we don't know how it's going to go. I personally think Andy Ruiz being lighter and smaller and faster and using his true speed, it's going to cause havoc in the heavyweight division. I'm just giving you the devil's advocate side where you're fighting some big boys and one shot can change it all. So if you're a little light, maybe some trouble for you. But I think it's going to take some time to really adapt that style. Yes, he's familiar with the head movement. Yes, he's learning, but it will take some time. I mean, look at Oscar Valdez. Oscar Valdez in his first fight with the Canelo team, he didn't look as sharp as he did when he fought Burchell. And it takes some time to build some chemistry, but I do like what I'm seeing from the camp. I like the fast hands. I like the hybrid style of hands up, a little bit of shoulder roll, and being dynamic defensively and offensively. You already know that Andy Ruiz has fantastic hand speed. For a heavyweight, they're like lightning. I mean, it's what caught Anthony Joshua off guard and eventually stopped him. So I'm really, really excited to see more or less what Andy Ruiz has to do. And I do expect him to take care of business against Chris Arreola. Chris Arreola has not won a fight in a very long time, and his last 6 fights have looked a little brutal. And I think it's a testament to Chris Arreola for continuing to fight on and take this fight. He knows he's getting paid, and I personally think PBC is sacrificing Arreola in order to prop up Andy Ruiz and solidify him to be a top 5 heavyweight. And to be honest with you, Andy Ruiz is pretty young. Tyson Fury, I don't see him fighting many more fights, to be honest with you. And I think if he beats Anthony Joshua twice, he might just ride off into the sunset. Maybe have an exhibition fight against some ridiculous fighter, make a lot of money, and then ride off into the sunset. Because Tyson Fury, I know his heart is in boxing right now, but once he accomplishes whatever he's trying to accomplish, and that's become undisputed heavyweight champion of the world again to solidify himself as a legend, I think he'll call it quits. Then you'll have Anthony Joshua, who's still very young and be around. He'll probably be propped up to number one again, right? And then Deontay Wilder, with whatever he decides to do, is going to be number two. And then Andy Ruiz may have an actual shot to become heavyweight champion of the world again. Because truthfully, I think Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz is always going to be a competitive matchup. I know a lot of people think that a lot of the same would happen in the second fight, but I do think a different game plan would be instituted and the work rate of Andy Ruiz would be substantially more than that second fight. Against Deontay Wilder, that's a tricky fight. I don't know what Deontay Wilder has to offer right now. So, based on what I see, I would have to pick Andy Ruiz going into a fight with Deontay Wilder because the blueprint is out how to beat Wilder. Avoid the right hand, and it's a hard task. But if you bully the bully, make him back up, he's in trouble, right? But Deontay Wilder, if he comes back strong, then you have to give him credit for being the second or third best based on Tyson Fury. So, Andy Ruiz, I'm looking forward to this. Potentially fight a Dillian White, maybe switch from PBC or stay with PBC and line up a fight with the Luis Ortiz to maybe get Deontay Wilder in the ring. And then you really start to make a case for yourself as a top heavyweight if you dispose of Wilder. Luis Ortiz, who's another ranked high heavyweight based on rankings alone, because believe it or not, Luis Ortiz only lost to Deontay Wilder, who's highly ranked. So who knows? Honestly, I like the matchup. Do you think Canelo and the Canelo team can save Andy Ruiz? I think it's a match made in heaven, but at the same time, I also want to just keep a cool head because we just started. And honestly, when you have habits like Andy Ruiz, sometimes the heart's a break. And I'm really, really happy for him for doing exactly what he said he wanted to do and matching up with Canelo to get the discipline, to get that hard work in, and really try to take back the reins on a possible historic career. Regardless, Andy Ruiz goes down, in my opinion, as a Mexican legend. He's the only heavyweight ever in Mexican history. And to be a multi champ, come on, you got to give him credit. If he can grab it all back and come back, the story's only going to get better. And I'm rooting for Andy Ruiz because I really do like him. I really, really do. I think he's a fantastic guy. And yes, he's a young knucklehead who learned the hard way that success sometimes isn't promised. And if you don't put the same effort in that you put in originally, you're not going to get and produce the same success. So the fight, May 1st, we get to see if the Canelo X Andy Ruiz marriage is going to work and that Canelo team is looking right. I can't even lie, honestly. So that's the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you think Andy Ruiz can do. Feel free to leave a like, comment, share this video. And if you're on Instagram, follow us at Good Boxing Podcast. And thank you so much. I am going to release this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I'm going to catch up with the audio. The YouTube stuff has been a little rough. But stay on the lookout for some really, really cool stuff coming to the channel. And be well.